All right, this lesson is going to be a little bit different. I wanted to introduce you all to some of the different training tools and weapons that we use here at the karate school, but more at an advanced black belt level. Not everybody's been using these, but I wanted you to get an idea about them. So I'm in the lower room of the Brighton Dojo, and we've got a couple of things that might be of interest to you. These are some of the older training methods that are used in traditional Okinawan style karate. So keep up your own regular training. This shouldn't be necessarily in place of your own practice session, but it's a way to gain some knowledge, continue to practice your katas, do your weapons, all those things. But sometimes training is learning new things and gaining knowledge, and that's what today's class is about. So whether you're a black belt or a beginner, I think some of what I'm showing you will be of interest to you. All right, so behind me is what we call the Makiwara. This is a traditional Okinawan karate training tool. It's a piece of wood, or in some cases a couple of pieces of wood, that are on a stand, and I'll show you what the stand looks like. All right, so there's a metal bracket that holds the two wooden pieces, and it's on a wooden base. So this is a Makiwara that can be transported from different places. As a matter of fact, this Makiwara came from my sensei, Joe Jennings, from his original dojo, probably more than, well, probably about 50 years ago. This is Makiwara stand. We've replaced the boards a few times, but the stand and the bracket are original ones from way back. So in Okinawa, they might do them on a stand like this, or they might put the post into the ground. And it had to go in pretty deep, so it would be very solid. Some people would have it in their backyard, or their garden, or their garage, or somewhere like that. Master Angi Uezu, the Okinawan grandmaster of Isshinryu karate, he would say that even if he couldn't do his katas, even if he didn't have time to do a lot of other things, he'd always hit the Makiwara at least 100 times with each hand. And if you've ever seen his knuckles, and those who have seen him live, you know what I mean, they're very calloused and very strong knuckles from all the work that he did on the Makiwara. Now, I don't know if everybody needs to do that much Makiwara work, but some is very good to teach you how to aim properly and hit those top two knuckles with some strength, with some focus, and to not be afraid of hitting something hard. Of course, it takes some time. I have beginners on the Makiwara, even black belts who haven't done it before, and they go in, they hit it 100 times, and their hand's killing them. Well, you shouldn't be doing that. Build it up gradually. Maybe do 10 hits each hand for a few weeks, then build it up to 20 hits, then maybe 30 or 50. But over time, you'll get to the point where you can hit it pretty hard, and you won't feel the pain from it. Your knuckles will be hitting it properly, and you'll develop at least a little bit of a callus on the knuckles so that you don't feel that it's going to be too tender or too painful when it hits. So I'm going to just adjust the camera slightly here, and I think you'll be able to see it mostly here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So the Makiwara has on it a small cushion. I've used old karate white belts and wrapped it around so that there's some cushioning on it, but it's not a real soft cushion. It's not like a foam pad or anything. It's still quite hard. And it's important to be able to get those knuckles directly on there. So when I start to punch, I'll do a few light ones first to make sure my alignment is correct and my knuckles are hitting it properly. The way I've got the board set up here, it makes a loud snapping noise, a clapping noise when I hit. And so I'll practice my punch to hit the Makiwara right in the center with those top two knuckles. Now, you don't want to hit on the knuckles by your fingers. You want to go to the hand knuckles, of course. The same two that we talk about when you're punching in the air. But now it really counts because you have to hit those two knuckles properly. So sometimes you'll take a stance and you'll do some punches. And I like to start the other hand out in front so that I can pull it back when I do my other punch. So I might do 10 punches with one hand, and then switch. And hit my punches with my other hand. Sometimes I'll do 2 punches in a row. I'll take a stance and I'll hit. So I'm getting the idea of a double punch. Now, for any punch, a stance is important. If I'm in an improper stance, an off-balance stance, or if my legs are straight and I hit the Makiwara, it's going to push me back. I'm not well balanced. I'm not well braced. So to be able to put your force into the target, you have to bend your knees and let your force go in instead of getting pushed back. So double strikes can be a good way to work it as well. Sometimes I'll do it where I start back a little further and then I'll step in and do my punch. And hit with those 2 knuckles right there, or even a double with a step in. So you can be creative and find different ways to hit the Makiwara, but again, all those are a straight punch with the front 2 knuckles. Now, standing sideways to it, I can hit with my back knuckles. So like a back fist. So that's getting the other side of the knuckles to strike the pad. Instead of the top front of the knuckles, it's the back of the knuckles there. This can also be done with the chop, the shuto, or the edge of the hand. Sometimes sideways here, I'll kind of hit the corner of it and get some force going in there, making my shuto hand straight and strong, and hit this way. Or the palm strike. That's a good way to practice too, and I'll even use it for blocks. I'll get my side block here kind of on the corner of the Makiwara, and I'll hit my forearm against it. So now I'm conditioning the forearm muscle and getting used to what it feels like to be blocking somebody. If I have a partner, great, I can practice my blocks with them. But if I don't have a partner, I can practice this way. And I'll do blocks with one arm, with the other arm, and try to even it out to work both sides equally. The Makiwara can also be used for kicking techniques, and especially a front kick. So with a front kick, because it's wood and it's not very forgiving, you have to make sure it's really the ball of your foot that hits. So when you kick in, you want to make sure it's proper part of your foot, the proper ball of your foot. So I might kick this way. With the ball of the foot, almost like trying to break a board, but kicking in, getting that ball of the foot, gaining confidence with the target that I'm striking with. Now, all of those strikes, of course, are using the limb, the leg, or the arm, but don't forget to use your hips as well. To really get power behind this, any technique, and especially for higher belts, the way to get more power behind a technique is to use your hips. So if I'm further back and my hand's further back, I've got a lot of momentum and I can turn my body in and get some power there. And I like that idea. I'm turning my hips to get some force. But I also will practice, instead of the punch starting from here, I'll practice with my punch closer to the Makiwara, but my hip will be back and then I'll push it forward. So I'll snap the hip and now the force gets transferred to the hand and into the Makiwara in a shorter distance. Bruce Lee used to call it the 1-inch punch, and that he would develop a lot of force, but knock people back with a punch that just started an inch away from the opponent. Well, this is one way to develop that, by having your hip back and then to just quickly snap your hip forward, but don't bring your hand back. Just punch straight in, and you can see that it's less arm motion and more hip motion. You see that? The hand's not retracting. It's just going right from a close distance right in because of that hip action. So the Makiwara teaches us a lot of things, and with training on it and proper training, before you just start hitting a post that you stuck in the ground, talk to your senseis about how to do it properly, and be smart, build up gradually. Don't go to the point where you're hitting anything too hard too soon. All right, no injuries. An injury puts you way back in your training. Better to take it slow, build up gradually. All right, next thing I want to show you, I'm going to turn the camera to a different training tool. So on the floor here, you can see these jars, probably pretzel jars or something that you get them in bulk, and inside are rocks. So I got a bunch of rocks, stuck them in there, and it's to give it some weight and some solidity. And this is to practice your grip, and it also helps you with your stance and your movement. So when you grip them, you might take a stance in front, and you'll bend your knees, and you'll grip the jars by getting your fingers around it and pull them up like this. Now they'll be at your sides, and you can do different things with them. Sometimes I'll do a circle step and just have the jars right there in front of me, and then circle step back. So they're at my sides, and the weight is pulling me down, making me feel more stable and more steady in my stance. So that's one way to use them. Again, it's something that you build up to gradually, but by doing it on a regular basis, you're going to improve your grip strength and your forearm strength, and it also helps with your stances. Another way I practice is in a horse stance. So I might just step and step and step and take a horse stance, keeping the jars at my side as I step. All right, so practicing with horse stance is good as well. Now, because there's some weight to it, we can also use them for some arm strength at the same time. And in this case, shoulder strength is the exercise we're going to do. I'm going to do my circle steps, but I'm going to lift the jar each time. I'm going to lift it up in front each time I do a step. So now I'm working the shoulders as well. And there's some weight in the jars. You can make them as heavy as you want with more rocks inside. But it's working the shoulders and your grip strength at the same time. All right, now I want to show you something special about the way that I'm holding it. Maybe some of you even noticed. Normally when we grasp something, we tend to reach around and our thumb kind of goes on the side of the arm like that, or the side of what we're grabbing. So it kind of extended this way. In this case, we're grabbing it in a slightly different way, more like a claw. So you see how my thumb is bent in like that. So when I'm holding the makiwara, or the jar, the chishi jar, I'm putting my fingers over the top, and then my thumb is here along the side of it. Can you see that, how it's along the side of the jar? So it's a more of a claw-like grip, which really works the muscles of the hand in a slightly different way. So this is the grip. And it takes some getting used to. It can be a little painful at first, like anything, but with some time, you get more used to it, and you get to get the experience of making a grab that way. When you grab a person that way, when you grab somebody's arm that way, those little bones of the hand and thumb can dig in more to the person's wrist or forearm or pressure points, so that you have a more painful grip on your opponent. And isn't that the point? If you're going to grab somebody and pull them, you don't want it to be easy for them, you want it to be painful for them. So you give them a pull, it'll make your moves more effective. So those are the training jars, and easy enough to make these at home with your own pretzel jars or something that you can get your hand around that way. I've seen them as small as like mayonnaise jars, that's fine. I suggest the plastic ones rather than the glass ones, just in case your hand gets tired and you lose your grip. You don't want to drop a glass one, but the plastic jars work out perfectly for that. All right, we're going to shift from training tools to a couple of weapons. These are a couple of the Okinawan training weapons that we don't usually practice here at the dojo, but you might have seen around. The first one is the tonfa. That's the handle onto the shaft, and there's typically two of them. And you would hold it either in the closed position or, like a sai, you can extend it out into the open position. Now, this open position, it gives you greater reach with your strikes or your blocks, so it can be very useful. But the handle itself is not on a swivel. The only way that you can open up the tonfa or to spin it is to loosen your grip a little bit and let it come out, and then bring it back in. So it's all in manipulating your grip. So there are katas with this, and in Isshinryu, we don't typically practice a tonfa kata. Some Isshinryu schools will do a tonfa kata as part of their curriculum, and it has some moves similar to kusanku. And you can see you can do a figure eight, and I'm loosening and tightening the grip as it's spinning around, and then I'll bring it back to my side, ready for striking. For a block, you can see that having the tonfa along the forearm is very useful to block against a bow or possibly even a sword. Blocking can be done going out and back or down and blocking. Again, similar in some ways to the side because you have two of the weapons. Even just a straight punch going forward hits with the front end of the tonfa, and that can be a pretty painful strike. X block, swinging and striking, blocking, all those can be done. So it's a great training tool. Again, it works on strengthening your forearms as well as learning the manipulation of the weapon, and something that especially black belts may start to pick up and gain some skill and experience with. That's the tonfa. All right, and one more weapon, which is an interesting historical aspect of Okinawan karate, is that most of the people in Okinawa were not professional soldiers or samurai warriors or anything like that. They were either farmers, hence the farming implements that we use as weapons, or they were fishermen. So that's where this comes in. So this is an oar. I had a student say the other day, it looks like a paddle. I said, yes, that's exactly what it is. It's an oar, and when the fishermen were doing their job, they would be using it that way. But if they had to protect themselves when they were back on land, if they had to fight against another weapon or defend themselves in any way, they have a great tool to use. Now, the end that's like the straight staff, of course, can be used for thrusting and striking normal way, so just like the bow, but then you can shift it and strike with the flat part or the blade part of the oar. The blade might be used more likely for striking, and the flat part maybe for blocking. So there are oar katas that have been passed down from generations in Okinawa that people will practice to this day. It's not part of Isshinryu karate, but it's still seen very much in Okinawan karate schools. And I have some friends who have taught bow or oar katas before to me and my students. So it's an interesting weapon to use as well. And it reminds you that when people are in a situation where they have to defend themselves and they don't have the normal weapons, swords, guns, things like that, they would use whatever they had available to them. So in this case, farm tools or fishing tools or fishing instruments. So we always will think about what do we have available, what's handy to us. Even for a self-defense situation, you can think about if I got attacked and I was in my bedroom, what's in my bedroom that I could use for self-defense? If I'm in my car, what would I use? If I'm in my office, what could I use? So we don't recommend necessarily using a weapon except for a dangerous situation, especially something life-threatening or when somebody else has a weapon. But it's a great equalizer. If somebody had a club or a knife or something, and I had an oar or a pool cue or a broomstick, something like that, I could use that as a weapon. And I think it's good to think about that. What is around you? What's handy that you can use? So I hope today's class was interesting and useful for you and gave you some knowledge about Okinawan karate. Think about the Makiwara. If you're at my dojo sometime and you want to work with my Makiwara, I'll be glad to teach you. Maybe make some of those jars, get those big jars of pretzels or whatever else might come in them. And then when you're finished with them, put the stones in, and now you've got a great training tool to strengthen your hands. So a class can be training hard, sweating. A class can also be learning some things that maybe you didn't know much about before. So I hope today was useful for you. It was great to see you, and let's have a bow, and we'll see you back in class soon.